How many book dedications do you remember? If you're like me, probably not too many, and that's mainly because most are very generic, right? But besides having a beautiful children's story, what if we could make even our dedication something special to make it even more memorable, where we can share and showcase our sense of humor, where we can give little readers a glimpse of our personality, maybe set a certain mood even before our story is being read, and perhaps show what is important to us, all whilst making someone special in our lives feel special. That's what this video is all about. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my weekly videos. So in this video, we will look at what a dedication is and where it is usually located in a book, how it differs from an acknowledgements page, the different parts of a dedication, how to create our own unique dedication with a number of really wonderful examples. And in the end, I'm sharing one of my favorite dedication ninja tips that might change how you think about dedications. So let's jump right in. What is a dedication in a book? Where is it usually located? And do we even need one? In a dedication, we usually mention someone whom we wish to honor or thank. I personally believe it is something truly special because it is an author's way of dedicating an entire piece of work to someone. So in this way, it is very similar to having an entire building or statue named after us or dedicated to us, which would make us feel very special, right? It can be as short as a simple sentence fragment or as long as a number of sentences. It is generally part of a book's front matter, something that goes before our actual story. If you'd like to know what else goes into our book's front matter and also what goes into a book's back matter in order to ensure we're using best practices when it comes to the order of these pages inside our children's book, make sure to watch my separate video on that. I'll add the link to the description below. So our dedication usually goes at the beginning of our book, either on its own separate page or as part of the copyright page where it is placed right above the copyright information. That's often the case if the dedication is relatively short and if the author is trying to keep the page count to a minimum. Something worth noting here is that if you decide to use and print actual page numbers inside your children's book, that our separate dedication page would not have a page number printed on it. If you have any questions regarding whether or not you should be printing page numbers in your children's book and what pages would and wouldn't show these page numbers, I've made a separate video for that as well, and I will add the link to the description below. Now, including a dedication is entirely optional. It is not a must-have, but certainly a nice-to-have. And while it is very common to include one, please don't feel pressured if you should decide not to. Now, a question I often receive is how a dedication and an acknowledgements page differ from each other, because with a dedication, we are essentially acknowledging or thanking someone, right? So let's look at this next. I already mentioned that a dedication or a dedication page is usually part of a book's front matter, right? Meaning it goes before our actual story. An acknowledgements page, on the other hand, is usually part of the back matter, which comes after our actual story. Sometimes we see an acknowledgement page as part of the front matter, but more often than not, it's placed at the end of the book, especially in children's books. And that's because when it comes to children's books, we want to be extra considerate of our readers' attention span and get to the story part as quickly as possible. A dedication usually mentions one specific person or one specific group of people we want to dedicate or devote our book to. Acknowledgements, on the other hand, usually list all those that have helped us in some way or in some capacity, either with the writing of our children's book or more generally those who have had some kind of impact on our lives. And so a dedication is generally fairly short, while acknowledgements can often be much longer, often stretching across a number of paragraphs and pages even. Now, given that dedications are usually really short, it might seem a bit silly to look at its different parts, but I believe that doing so actually helps us with the writing and crafting of our own. So let's take a look. Most dedications usually have three main elements or parts. One, a dedication should obviously mention whom it is for, right? Whether that's one single person, a short list of people, or a specific group or groups of people. Because I have written so many books already, I've had the opportunity to write many dedications for many different people and groups. For example, for my husband, my children, which would be considered a list of people here because there are more than just one name, right? My mom, my grandma, my old school garden teacher, and also groups of people such as writers, journalists, and parents. When picking the person or group whom to dedicate our book to, I often like to think about whom this particular book would speak to or touch the most, or who inspired me to write this particular story, or whom do I connect or associate with this particular story. So for example, for my book Forever My Always, that is meant to be gifted to graduates or simply to our kids when they are about to leave their nest, I dedicated it to my two boys because Forever My Always was essentially inspired by them. And my book Forever After, that is meant to be gifted to newlyweds or newly engaged couples, I dedicated it to this group of people, the newlyweds and the newly engaged. So if you wrote your beautiful children's book for a particular person in your life or with a specific person in mind, you could dedicate this particular book to them. Two, the second element of a dedication is who wrote the dedication, which is you, right? The author. Here we have two different options. Either add no name or do add our name below the dedication. Not adding a name below a dedication is often the case with books of other genres, simply because who else would have written the dedication here if not the author? But when it comes to children's books or books with multiple authors, additional people often help shape our book, such as the illustrator. So here it's more common to include the name of the person who wrote that dedication in order to prevent confusion. And so here we can either add our full name or simply our initials or a combination thereof. Something I love seeing is if the illustrator too has been given an opportunity to add a dedication, which then is often placed right below the author's dedication. And here we would of course have to add the names below the dedication so the reader knows who wrote which. And this again could be the full name, initials, or a combination of those two. And three, the third element of a dedication would be the actual meat of it, and would be anything besides listing the name whom our book is dedicated to. Now this too is actually not a must, because a dedication can simply say something like to mom or to plus a name. Then of course nothing else needs to be added. But if you wish to make your dedication even more personal, then any additional information would be part of this third dedication element. So using my previous examples here again for my book Forever My Always, that is meant to be gifted to graduates or to our kids when they are about to move out for the first time, and that I dedicated to my two boys, I wrote for C and L, you're forever my always. It's very simple, a little sentimental, and very meaningful to myself and my two boys. Maybe for them not right now, but once they are that age. And so as you can see, for this particular book, because it is a fairly short dedication, I went ahead and added it at the top of my copyright page instead of using a separate page for it. And for my book Forever After, that is meant to be gifted to newlyweds or newly engaged couples, I wrote this: for the newly engaged couple, the newly married couple, and those who have been married for years. This is for you. Now, as children's authors, it's really important to remember who will see this dedication, right? We will have to remember that little ones might read it. And so when writing our dedication, we will want to make sure we're using appropriate language. Now, mentioning this here might seem silly, but I have read enough dedications to know that for other genres, we might find some inappropriate language sometimes. So we want to make sure to always remember our main audience. When it comes to the writing of our dedication, there are many different writing styles. They can be serious, funny, creative, or really inspiring. They can be super short or quite long. And like I already said, they can be for just one specific person, multiple people listed by name, or for a specific group of people. So let's look at a number of really great examples for each to hopefully get our own creative juices flowing. Just a quick side note here that not all of these examples are from children's books. A great and really funny example is this one right here. To my wife Margaret and my children Ella Rose and Daniel Adam, without whom this book would have been completed 2 years earlier. This is a dedication by Joseph Rotman in his book Graduate Text in Mathematics. This is such a great example because it really tells us something about the character of the author himself, which we may not have suspected otherwise given the book's title. Another funny one is this one right here. For Carly, who was a better person than I am, even though she was a dog. This dedication by David Wong in his book, This Book is Full of Spiders, made me laugh out loud when I read it the first time. And who wouldn't want to evoke such a reaction from their readers even before diving into the actual book itself, right? Now, if our beautiful children's book is a bit more serious, here are 2 wonderful examples for that as well. To all the children who have ever felt different. This dedication is by Eloise McGran in her book, The More Child. So perhaps your book talks about bullying, about inclusion or exclusion, or about kindness. Then something that speaks to our little readers' feelings and identity may be a wonderful way to use our dedication. Another beautiful and more serious one is this one right here by Sarah Maas. To the readers who look up at the stars and wish. This one is beautiful because it identifies and speaks to the dreamers among us. A dedication that I felt was quite creative is by the author Moose Elaine in his book, I Wonder What I'm Thinking About. To my wife Karen, who is 90% inspiration and 90% patience. No, it doesn't add up to 180%. She multitasks. Again, this is such a great way to not only show our own humor, but we as readers can also see what the author's relationship with his wife might be like. And I love that. One of the most creative ways to use dedications has to be in Lemony Snicket's children's novel series, A Series of Unfortunate Events, books 1 through 13. Here, each book's dedication is addressed to Beatrice, a woman whom the author loved and was engaged to until she broke off the marriage and died soon after. It's right in line with the type of humor found within the series itself. Here are a few of my favorites. Book 1. For Beatrice, my love for you shall live forever. You, however, did not. Book 4. For Beatrice, you will always be in my heart and my mind and in your grave. And book 6, for Beatrice, when we were together, I felt breathless. Now you are. So each book in the series holds a 1 or 2 line dedication that is almost like a mini story in itself when all put together. Now a more inspirational or inspiring dedication is this one right here. Dedicated to every parent on the planet that is brave enough to dare their child's dream, support them on their journey, and catch them when they fall. This one is by Phil M. Jones in his children's book, The Magic of Words. And what I love about this one is that it addresses the parents of our little readers. And this one right here was also written toward a specific group of people. This is by Cinda Williams Chima. To the book lovers, teachers, librarians, booksellers, family and friends who taught me that books are the gateway to dreams. Some of them even come true. And I really like this one because it addresses those groups of people who have made a beautiful impact on the author's life. Now, here's something that might change how you think about dedications, especially if you didn't plan on including one. Dedications give us authors a beautiful opportunity to share so much about ourselves with so little. With it, we can give others a glimpse of our own values, our likes, our preferences, and about those that are most important to us. And including a dedication provides us with a really special opportunity to bring us closer to or to connect with people we love and adore already. For example, for my book Precious, which is meant to be gifted to new moms or moms-to-be, my dedication reads this. To Bethany, mother of 4 dragons, thank you for being such a wonderful inspiration to so many moms and moms-to-be. Bethany's a mom of 4 adorable little boys whom I had been following over on Instagram for quite some time because I really love her kindness, the way she interacts with her children, and the way she represents herself in life. And so after the birth of her fourth son, I sent her the newly published book with this dedication. And it was so special to her. This book was already so special to me, but now it was also really special to her. Now, I didn't ask for this at all, but Bethany actually ended up sharing my book with her followers of over 500,000 people over on Instagram. And that's the power of a really thoughtful, purposeful dedication. It moves people, so much so that they might even share it with others. Now, it's important to note here that I never ever dedicate a book to someone because I want or expect these people to share my book with others. The only reason I would ever dedicate an entire book to someone is if this person has truly impacted my life in some way, shape, or form, thereby inspiring me to write the story, or if I specifically wrote it with this person in mind. When I write a dedication, I always do so without any strings attached and without any expectations. I do so because I truly admire and care for that someone whom I dedicated the book to. And when this person ends up sharing my book with others, which of course they often do, it's simply a beautiful extra bonus. But whether or not they share this particular book, the simple act of me having dedicated my book to them more often than not brings us closer together. And again, to me, that's the true magical power of a well-written dedication, bringing people together. In the end, I feel the best ones are those that reveal something about us, the author, that others may not have known about us before, such as humor, and that make others feel special. I really hope you found this video helpful and that it inspired you to write and draft your very own dedication with perhaps a bit more intention, knowing how powerful it can truly be. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to your very own beautiful and meaningful dedication. Bye! Special, especially. It's very special to me, especially. Such a hard word.